I am going to talk about membership, subscription and submission. In DSpace, I think membership is the basic requirement to become as an author or a reviewer or a metadata editor or to play any significant role in DSpace, one should be a member first. So, just as in the case of traditional library systems, membership is essential to interact with the library. Of course, in DSpace, just as in the case of public libraries, anybody can access the digital repository, search in the repository, retrieve some data and even download. Of course, this is the default configuration. Anybody would start a open access initiative based repository. But again, if the administrator decides no, unless somebody is a member, he cannot even access or download or search. They can do that, but of course this is against the principles of open access. So, anonymous users, as we discussed during the time of administration, anonymous users have limited role, that is just as public library users, they can only access, retrieve, search, retrieve and download. But if somebody wants to subscribe to a particular collection, what I mean by subscription is just as if you subscribe to a journal, you get whenever a new journal issue is released, you get a copy of it. Here also, if a member subscribes to a particular collection, whenever some item, digital item is uploaded into a particular collection, immediately the persons whoever subscribed to that collection will get email alert informing him about the addition to that collection. So, how to become a member? In DSpace by default anybody can search, as I told, but one should be a member to subscribe, to get permission from the administrator to submit or to become a reviewer or a metadata editor. So, various roles can only be played only when one becomes a member. Okay. So, once they become a member, they can approach the administrator to a personal email saying that I would like to submit to a particular collection as I have a few publications which are copy left. Or sometimes the administrator may pick up somebody as a reviewer, but basically one should be a member even to be picked up as a reviewer or a metadata editor. Now, how to become a member? The following screenshots demonstrate the procedure of becoming a member. In other words, one has to get himself registered with the digital repository. So, if you go to this DSpace, here you can see, of course, this is the XML UI interface where you have register is the one which is there. So, you can see I think in the following screens you can follow wherever this blue arrow is there, that is what is going to be emphasized for to be clicked. Here you can see register is there. That is, this is meant, or if somebody is already a member, they can log in, but if they are not members but they wish to become members, one has to click the register. So, here you can see again here new user registration. You can see a big there are 3 screens that are going to be followed. We are in the first screen. So, here simple, you have to leave your email address. So, basically in DSpace what it means by becoming a member is nothing but you leave your email address to the DSpace system so that it communicates. Please remember, DSpace mostly communicates to the people who are involved, though it hardly receives anything from the end users or members or anybody except in the feedback mechanism. Okay. If one wants to leave a feedback, then they can click the feedback this one and leave their comment. Then DSpace administrator in DSpace configuration, whoever is identified to take the feedbacks from the users or anybody will receive an email. Otherwise, much of the DSpace is a one-side communication. But again, in a way, we have to emphasize much of the DSpace workflow process, the members, reviewers, everything, they use heavily the mail server, that is where DSpace in configuration identifies what is the organizational mail server, or sometimes even they can configure the mail server on the same system where DSpace is running, or even in some cases if organizations do not have their own mail server, they can create a Gmail account and use it in DSpace for making DSpace to communicate it to its members for entrusting various activities. So, once you enter the email and say click register, then you will get verification email is sent. Of course, this is the normal practice with many systems where after all one can give their friend's email address or somebody's email address, but still the system always would like to verify whether it is the person who intend to become a member or register himself is the one who entered the email. After system does not know that okay, this email belongs to the person who entered it, I can enter my friend's email address, but the communication email will go to the mail address that is entered. Then if the same person receives it, it says, see, this is only a verification email, whether if you have sent this, okay, do the following things. I accept you as the person who has sent the request for getting yourself registered. You can see for example, I have given one fictitious address where DSpace has sent an email, and with you can see there is a hyperlink. So, if you are the person who intend to become the member of the DSpace, you can click the hyperlink here. That is why I have put again the blue arrow where you have to suppose to click the hyperlink, which takes you back to the repository where you have to fill in the rest of the details. So, when you click that, of course, there is few columns templates you have to fill up these fields. So, it asks what is your first name, last name and other things, and of course, you have to enter your password and re-verification of your password also. Though it has the phone numbers and other things, hardly it matters, even it is optional. You really do not have to fill up the phone number, but what is essential definitely is the last name and preferably first name also, and definitely the passwords, so that whenever you want to log in, these are the passwords you have to use. In fact, the same screen appears when you want to modify your password. So, if you go to your profile in DSpace menu somewhere, and you can, by logging in, you get the same profile wherein you can change. Of course, in rare cases probably the last name changes once the maiden name surname changes, that also you can do. Okay. So, in any case, this is the way DSpace keeps a bare minimum information about its users rather than a host of informations about him. In fact, if the administrator has configured DSpace over secure socket layer, okay, SSL, then the passwords get encrypted. This is important in some cases for the simple reason, normally passwords which are plain text can be captured by spurious programs called sniffers. They can capture your password and easily they can break into your account and do whatever they wish to do. Though of course there are hardly few things in DSpace a member can do except submission and other things. That also with the approval of the administrator. But if it is HTTPS, that is if it is the DSpace is configured with Apache SSL combined, then the passwords get transmitted in an encrypted mode. Then the sniffer programs cannot really guess what the password is. This is just ensuring more security for the users of DSpace. But again, you remember the HTTPS has its own disadvantages in the sense some protocols like OAI and other things or even your CNRI handles and other things should not be accessible over HTTPS. At least those things, that is some aspects of DSpace should be outside HTTPS, whereas login and other things can be under HTTPS. But anyhow, that is outside the scope of the present presentation. Once you can see the columns, registration is finished. That means you have already become a member. So this is the way one becomes a member. Next time onwards, you can use login. Of course, right now it assumed you have logged in already. You can log out, or whenever you want to log in, you can use login instead of register. Subscribing to a collection. A member can subscribe to any collection or to any number of collections in fact. There is no limit on how many collections one can subscribe. If he is interested in a host of collections, only thing is he has to choose each of those collections in which he is interested to get email alert whenever something is added to those collections. He cannot subscribe to a community. For example, in the way DSpace is organized, under a community many collections appear. But again, the users are not allowed to subscribe to a community, but he can subscribe to a collection. So to subscribe, of course, first you have to log in. So once you have become a member, that means you can only members can log in. So once you have become a member, then you have to choose which are the collections one would like to subscribe. Okay. So here you can see if you press communities and collections, you get a big list of collections. Of course, I have taken the DRTC's Librarians Digital Library, where of course there is only one community, that is Library and Information Science, but again we have various collections on presentations, publications, photographs, and of course Ranganathan's photographs and other things. So once you log in, so here you can see, if you see something like log out or something, that means you have already logged in. After logging in, click the menu item called profile. Okay, if you see a profile, which normally is used to reset your passwords and other things, but on XML UI interface, it is under profile you have to mention about what are the collections you are interested in subscribing. So expand the pull down menu to choose the collections you wish to subscribe. Okay. If a member does not want to get email alerts anymore, he can remove a collection from the list of subscribed collections also. So you can see here not only the list of collections, you can also have an idea of the collections you are already a subscriber. Okay. So here you can see email subscriptions are there. Of course, your password and other things are there. As I told earlier, the profile includes the information you have entered while you are becoming a member, that is while you are becoming yourself registered a member of DSpace. So here you can see a big list of collections, you can keep on adding them. So that means you can add any number of collections to get email alerts whenever something is added here. Now, if you want to remove, then you can see a list of things which you want to remove. You can mark them and you say you remove all this. Okay. That means you want to unsubscribe. For example, if you find too many email alerts are coming, I do not want to receive any email alerts from the digital repository, you can always unsubscribe the collections you are not interested anymore. Then self-archiving. So, thus far we have collected how to become a member, how to subscribe to collections you wish to receive, email alerts. Say for example, you want to play a bigger role in the repository. Self-archiving is the one which facilitates, which DSpace facilitates to upload your documents, whether they are images or publications or whatever. So, as I told you earlier, one should be a member to do that. If a member wishes to submit his publications, he should email to the administrator to get permission to submit to a collection. So, you have to write a personal email to the administrator saying that I am interested in submitting my publications to a particular collection. Again, you have to remember, just as in the case of subscription, here also submission is allowed to a collection, you cannot submit to a community. So, naturally you have to request the administrator which are the collections you are interested to submit. After logging in, okay, if you choose the collection you are allowed to submit will appear, of course. If the DSpace administrator has recognized you as an author or a submitter in DSpace language to a particular collection, whenever you log in and go to that collection, you can see the hyperlink submit a new item to this collection. That means you are recognized as a submitter to this collection. But if you go to any other collection where you are not given the permission to submit, this particular hyperlink does not appear. So, this appears only to the submitters who are allowed by the administrator. So, how to become a submitter? It is not only just email, it is the administrator who decides or who has the prerogative to decide whether you should be allowed to submit or not. So, if he refuses you the permission to submit, there is no way you can submit to a collection in DSpace. But again, self-archiving normally in an institutional repository, probably all the faculty members or the scientists or the active authors are allowed to submit. So, to complete the submission process, he has to fill up the metadata and upload the object as shown in the following screens. So, actually submission is a fairly simple process. Based on the Dublin Core metadata or qualified Dublin Core metadata, DSpace has created 2 pages of worksheets wherein you have to enter some of the elements. Then at the end it says, okay, you can upload the digital document, and finally it shows some license agreement which you have to say I grant the license, then it gets archived onto the. So, here you can see if somebody is allowed to be a member of a digital repository, then they can see where the arrow mark is there, you can submit. You want to submit a new item to this collection, you click this. Then of course, you can see again a list of screens. That means you have to fill up 2 screens of metadata, then something about authorizations and other things will follow up. So, here you can see describe an item. So, you have various metadata elements here one has to fulfill. Of course, here probably you have author name and first name, last name and other things, the title of the document. Like that, there are a few elements to be filled up by the author who wants to upload a document. And similarly, once you filled up 2 pages of metadata elements where it talks about date of publication and what type of document, DCMI type, then what language it is in, then what is the title, what is the first name, last name, probably in the second screen what is the abstract or contents page, what are the subject descriptors. Like that there are a few metadata elements to be filled in, which I think fairly simple. And only thing is, in the submission process, DSpace made title and date as mandatory elements. That means unless you fill up these 2 columns or these 2 fields, you are not allowed to go to the next screen. But however, many of the Dublin Core elements are optional. But again, if you wish as an administrator to make a few more fields mandatory, then inputforms.xml can be reconfigured in such a way to tell that a particular element is mandatory, and unless it is filled up, do not allow the authors to go to the next screen. But once you fill up the metadata in both the screens, you can get one screen where you have to upload your digital document. So, this is of course once you say browse to upload, it will show you the data directory structure of your computer, wherein probably you must be having your own document. It could be either an image or a PDF file or a Word file or anything. So, going through the directory structure, pick up the right document for which you have entered the metadata in the last 2 pages, and you click upload. Here you have another facility, as DSpace allows a bundle of bit streams. So, the upload process can go in a kind of cyclic way. You pick up the next file, next file, next file, until all the files related to a particular item are entered. So, that is the way you enter a bundle of bit streams. Once that is done, then of course for verification you will have another screen. You can see that it displays whatever that is entered as metadata, so that you can check whether some spelling mistakes are there, or somewhere some metadata is forgotten, you have forgotten to enter, or you entered wrong metadata or anything. So, you can access each screen, first screen, second screen, maybe third item you thought no, this is not the item to be uploaded. So, you want to reload another one. All this is only a pre-final step, one of the pre-final steps before the document actually gets onto this one. So, the last screen, once you have verified the metadata and you have verified the digital object, the file which contains the digital object is the right one is uploaded, then finally you get a kind of a license agreement. Of course, this license agreement right now by default there is a kind of a fictitious license, but again if one wants in DSpace, the administrator can configure whether to display Creative Commons license or the license which is customized and prepared for the same for this particular repository can be displayed. So, once he says I grant the license, so you can see where the arrow is, there you can say I grant the license, then DSpace says submission is complete. So, that means and you can go back to the home page, and sometimes this submission is complete does not mean that it appears in the digital repository immediately. It depends on the administrator what policy he has adopted. If he has chosen there are a set of reviewers, metadata editors, it will go to the other workflow process before actually it appears on the digital repository. So, the conclusion is, depending on the workflow defined for the collection, the submitted digital object may go through a review process or metadata editing. If this DSpace administrator hasn't specified any metadata people, directly it may get loaded onto the repository and people can access, which may not be the case normally. If everything is okay, that means if the reviewer has accepted, metadata people have corrected the metadata, the digital object will get persistent ID. So, as everything should have a unique ID, it gets an ID and immediately get indexed. Because of the powerful Lucene search engine, it has an incremental indexing process. The moment it is it appears on the repository, without the administrator doing anything, the object will get the metadata gets indexed. Anybody can search by one of the key terms in the metadata. With that, we conclude.